Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Well, I'm here in the UK and it's 11 p.m. for me here, but that's okay because I usually stay up late and I talk to my friends around this time. And today, speaking of friends, I am so happy to welcome Asha Lemmie to this chat. Asha, thank you so much for being here with us today. And thank you so much for giving us your time. And also, thank you so much for writing this beautiful book. Yeah, here it is. And I just loved it and I couldn't put it down. And Asha, I remember we met a few months ago and we talked on a video call. Of course, it wasn't an in-person meeting, which we would have wished for, but this is the reality of today. And that was our first meeting. And I was just amazed that we were literally sort of about the same age. And you are just an incredible writer. You have written this amazing book and we have all read it. Um, at Literati, and we have so many questions. And I promise, fingers crossed, that we will get through most of those questions, and we will also ask you, some questions, personally. But I think first of all, before we go to those, um, Asha, how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for asking. And thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited.
Your website says that you spend your time in Tokyo, London, and the US. And I was just, wondering, what was it like for you initially to visit Japan, and what drove you there to travel there, and how often do you go there? Of course, before this pandemic.
Well, my godmother is Japanese, and I've been lucky to have this amazing bond with her family. They've been very gracious and accepting towards me. And so I try to go and visit them a few times a year. I also have several friends from college who live in Japan. And it's just, I try to spend between 3 to 4 months there a year. It's been very difficult with COVID and not being able to travel. I can't go to
Mhm.
London either. I love London. It's
I wish
probably
you
my
could
favorite.
come and we could meet in
I
person.
know that would be so much fun. We could have high tea.
I know.
But ultimately, I'm quite grateful to be healthy, and I just hope that we can all stay healthy. And one day soon, we will have the beautiful international multicultural world that we all love so much.
Yeah, I hope so. We all wish for the same. So, you are, I think you're 24 right now. And you started writing this book when you were 16. Like,
Mhm.
that's incredible. So I was just wondering, like, did you have this story in your mind then, or did it start, sort of, did it start developing in the process of writing this book? Did it sort of unfold in that writing time? Did you sort of know how this was gonna end and what the whole story was gonna be?
Well, I did write the first three chapters when I was 16. I actually wrote them during physics class because I was not paying attention in physics. I don't really have a knack for the sciences, but I needed to look like I was paying attention. So I was writing in my notebook. But what I was actually writing was the first part of the story. Um, and then I didn't work on it again until after I graduated from college. And then I was able to finish it. And I think that ultimately I grew up with Nori. She's
Mhm,
kind of like a sister to me because we got to grow up together.
mhm. So was she sort of like in your mind initially when you started writing it, and then you sort of delayed it till your graduation? Was the story still in your mind? Were there points where you did not want to go ahead with it? And like what made you sort of, stick to it to say that you will continue the story?
It never left me.
Mhm,
Honestly, I never stopped thinking about Nori. I never stopped thinking about Akira. I never stopped wondering what their journey looked like. And I always knew how it would end. Um, I've been asked many times, did you ever consider another ending? And
mhm.
the answer is honestly no.
No. So again, you have these characters and you have built this friendship with them, and we have like a lot of questions about Nuri, of course. And like the first one, which is from Natalie, is that Asha, in your eyes, is Nuri a feminist?
I would say that she is definitely someone who believes that women are capable of more than society would like them to believe that they are.
Mm-hmm. And like there was a line, I think, if I remember, it says, "I don't think I want to be a woman," and then Kiyomi tells her like someone has to be. And I was just wondering, was there a sort of specific reason behind that? What was going on in your mind when you were writing that?
Well, I think as I was growing up, and I was going through puberty, I was getting all of this advice from women who really meant well, but all of this advice about how to protect myself from men or not put myself in certain situations, or you can't sit like this anymore, you have to sit like this, you have to do this. And I was like, well, I don't I'm not really interested in any of this. Can I just go back to being a child? Because this sounds genuinely exhausting to have to go through life like this. But as Kiyomi puts it, someone has to do it.
Yeah, yeah. And again, knowing more about Nuri, so Leslie, she wants to know, and that she's that the fact that you dedicated this book to all the outcasts, and she's wondering, is there a Nuri in real life who inspired this story?
Well, I do have several friends who have had experiences that they've shared with me, and a lot of them I did take and put into the book. And I also put some of my own experiences into the book. But there's no one person who I could say is Nori. I borrowed a lot from a lot of different people. And I think that's one of the things that you get to do in fiction that makes it so beautiful, is it allows you to really combine a lot of different elements to make this story that hopefully resonates with a lot of different people.
Mhm. And then the next question, I think, which so many people have, is from Claire. And she says that she loved Nuri and Akira's relationship. And she's wondering, what was it that inspired you to write so much about siblings, which is like not something that we see often in books. Like talking about my brothers, it's not sort of that kind of friendly relationship. We always fight and argue. And we see a bit of that, in Nuri and Akira as well, because Akira is slightly older, and he has sort of that bossiness that usually siblings would show. So what was it that inspired you in focusing on this sibling relationship?
I definitely think that sibling relationships are one of the formative relationships in our life, and yet they're so underexplored. We get a lot of stories about mother daughter relationships or father son relationships or romantic relationships, and we don't really get sibling relationships very often, or if we do, they're sister sister or brother brother. Brother sister relationships are so rare in fiction, and I think, I don't have an older brother. I would have liked one. I would have liked, um, I think, someone to protect me. So
Mhm.
I decided to give that to Nori.
Yeah. Well, I hope brothers read this book and try to be good brothers. Well, I'm just kidding. Um, so I'm gonna be honest with you, Asha. Our club had a lot of emotions about the ending of this book. There was just so much in there. Like when I was going through the last chapter, I was like, wow, this is like something I was not expecting, because like in just the last few pages so much is happening, and you're like, is it just only like 3 or 2 pages left now, and like is the story gonna end here? So a lot of people were like upset at different points. One was about Nuri leaving Noah, or like how she treated her baby, or her choice to stay in a place, that had brought her so much pain in her life, and she's sort of back to that sort of life. So, and I'm gonna mention there's one question from one of our readers, and um, she actually said that but there were like mixed opinions, and she says that that she's actually happy that the ending of this book is not what many would call a traditional happy ending. And other readers felt like they understood Nori's decision. So, in your words, why did Nori make that choice?
Well, ultimately, the short answer, I think, is that she does it for her brother.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think she feels very strongly that he spent his life trying to make sure that she had the opportunity to have a life and to be given a chance. And I think she feels that her life cannot simply be happy, it has to be meaningful. I
Mm-hmm.
think she really feels like her personal happiness is less important than taking the opportunity to have a role where she can make some positive changes and do some good. I think that there's also a cultural element here where, in a lot of non Western cultures, there is more the idea of sacrifice. There's more the idea of we, not me. And I think that that is very much Nori's mentality. I guess
Mm-hmm.
the other thing I would say is she's only 26 years old when the book ends. Her life is far from over.
Yeah.
There is still possibility and there is still hope for her. And I know it's not the um, they got married and lived happily ever after ending that a lot of people would want, especially after watching her go through so much. So I do understand. But I strongly disagree with the notion that she's repeating her grandmother's
Yeah.
life. I think she's taking the role that her grandmother had, but I think that because she has had the experience of being marginalized and being powerless, I don't think she could ever be her grandmother. I think
Yeah.
she's going to be Nori.
So following this, this is a question that so many people have asked, and they're wondering if there is going to be a sequel to this novel. And again, you said Nori is going to be, better than her grandmother. So should we expect that there's going to be another book in which she's going to fix everything, hopefully?
Well, fixing everything is going to be no small task.
Yes.
This is a highly dysfunctional family.
Yeah.
So I wrote this with absolutely no intention to write a sequel. It
Mhm.
was a standalone. That was going to be it. But I have gotten this question so many times, and in my mind, the story does go on.
Mhm.
I have kind of kept up with her in my head as an adult. So I can't say for sure, but anything's possible.
Well, we hope that you do write another book and that you write so many more books. We love Nuri so much, and we are just curious what happens. And as you mentioned, she's only 26, so we're
Yeah,
curious what she does next. So we wish you good luck for that.
thank you.
So another reader called Wanda needs to know um, what happened to Miyoki. Did she find the necklace that Nori left her?
She did find the necklace.
Hmm.
She did find the necklace, and I like to believe that she was able to sell it and she was able to use the money to get her sister back and hopefully set up a life for the two of them.
And then another of our readers, Ayubri, would like to hear about your writing process after you find, inspiration for a story. How did you do the historical research? And Camilla, no, yeah, Camille wants to know, how you overcome writer's block. So it's more about like, the writing process, collecting all the information, and it contains a lot of like, you're going into a different time period.
Yes. Well, my writing process is very disorganized, I'll be honest. I will usually write in short bursts. So I don't have a consistent schedule. I will write all day one day and then I won't write again for a week or sometimes two. But I'm always thinking about it. Half the writing process does not actually involve writing, it involves thinking and plotting and planning and knowing your characters like the back of your hand so that you can make them seem real. You know, what would Nori do in this situation? What would Akira do in this situation? It's just learning the answers to those questions. And then writer's block is something that every writer has to deal with. And I think for me, it stems from lacking confidence in myself. I've always struggled with self worth and self esteem. And so I definitely have times when I think, what am I doing? Why am I trying to be a writer? But, you just have to remind yourself that there are people out there who care what you have to say.
Yeah.
There are people out there who need your words and your message, and you have to trust that your work will find the people who need it, and those people will appreciate it. And the people who don't need it, oh well, there's lots of books in the world for them too.
Yeah. So just a bit curious, like, were you ever just worried about the fact that, you're still very young, and, you're still in university? There's sometimes that, that fear, or that, you sort of like, underestimate yourself. So did you go through those battles as well? And then, how did you cope with that?
I definitely went through that. I definitely went through,
Mhm.
I mean, I've still to this day, when I tell people that I'm an author, sometimes people will go, "Oh, but you're so young." And, I do feel like there is more of a challenge to be taken seriously when you're young and you're a woman and you're of color and, you feel like you have to be better just to walk into the room.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I think ultimately that affirmation from the outside world is great and wonderful, and we all look for that, but you have to make some sort of peace with yourself. This is all I know how to do. I've always wanted to be a writer. I've come to believe that this is what I'm meant to be doing, and I've come to believe that for every person who doesn't want to hear what I have to say, there's someone out there who is more receptive and who's willing to give it a chance.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, I do agree with you. There's sometimes that, that faith and that belief that you need, that, that you can do this, and you have that positivity and that optimism within you. It's just believing in yourself. So sometimes you need that, right? um, and just to all our viewers right now, I would like to say that we're going through some of the pre-read questions, the pre-submitted questions that you sent us. But if you have more questions, feel free to put your questions in the comment box, and we'll make sure that we cover as many as we can today. So um, there are a lot of symbols in the book as well, and so let's talk about that for a minute. The first one is obviously rain, and our readers have also identified a few others as well, so we'll go through them a bit sort of quickly. The first one is that, is there a small biblical influence with the name Noah?
Hmm, probably. That was probably subconscious. I actually just really like the name Noah.
And how did you choose, like, the musical pieces in the book? And like, so many of us just loved it. It was just, and we could feel it, we could hear it, you know it was just, it was just amazing that you this was an incredible part of the book. So how did you pick those uh, music pieces?
Well, I have a background in classical music, so I have quite the personal repertoire. And Ave Maria is just a simple, beautiful piece. And I thought that Nori connecting to it, it just made sense to me. It felt real. And then the other piece that people have asked me about is Chacon, which is
Mhm,
a lesser known piece. But I just think that it's so haunting.
mhm,
So I chose it because it reminds me of kind of like being at the bottom of the ocean.
mhm, mhm.
So I think that Nori and Akira are always kind of in the midst of this storm together. So I think that that's why I chose that piece for them.
Yeah. And again, the rain, is there any specific reason behind that?
Well, I just think that it's an inverse of the way most people think about
Mhm,
a good day. There's the line where Akira kind of makes fun of Nori for saying that she likes rain. He says, no one likes rain. No one ever says, I wish it weren't so sunny today. But she says, you can't hear sunshine from the attic.
mhm,
So I just think that rain in the novel represents the nuances of the human condition. It represents sorrow, it represents adversity. It represents the many different kinds of obstacles that we have to overcome just to be human. So I think that it made a really good metaphor.
yeah, yeah. So another of our readers, Nagisa, she's a Japanese reader in our group, and she, has given us a great insight on the culture. And she notes that some of the issues that Nuri confronts in the book, like racism, gender roles, patriarchy, and displacement, could still be found in many places. And it has occurred, at different points in time as well. So she's curious. How did you choose the post-war Japan for setting your story?
So I read a lot of novels, historical fiction novels that take place in the World War II era. It seems to be a very popular time period to set books in. And I noticed that most of them were from an American or European perspective: Poland, Germany, France. And those are all important stories, and I've enjoyed many of them. But I really wanted to um, do something different, and I wanted to explore kind of characters of color who don't often appear in historical fiction and whose perspectives are often considered less important.
Mhm. And then our next question, which is from Helena, and I want to ask it as well. Yeah, and that is, we want to know which character you relate to most in the book.
Nori.
No, is there a specific reason? Do you see any similarities, between you and Nori? And what is it that connect you guys?
Well, I think, we both have struggled a lot with a sense of identity. I think we both struggled a lot with a sense of self worth. And I think that both of us are more capable than we think.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, indeed. And we have a question from Claudia. Who in your life encouraged you to write? uh, you know, and are there any pivotal moments regarding, that you can recall? Was there like any specific moment for that?
Well, I had this amazing English professor at Boston College, Professor O'Hare, who really encouraged me with my writing. And, I told him I wanted to be a writer. And he said, Asha, I have a lot of students tell me I want to be a writer. I'm going to be a big time writer. I'm going to be the next big thing. And, he kind of politely tells them, don't quit your day job. But me, he said, I really think you could do it.
Hmm.
I've been doing this a long time and you have something really special.
Yeah,
So
I think
every
that.
time I was
Mhm.
getting rejected, I would just remember that he said that to me.
I think it's, it really helps having
Mhm.
mentors around you, having good friends around you, when there's that positive energy around you. people believe in you, they help you, they support you, and it just makes you uh, believe in yourself, and you then stick to your mission. So I fully agree with that, and it's good to have mentors. And we have another question, and that is from Doreen, and she would like to know, was Alice inspired by someone from your own life experience?
I don't know anyone precisely like Alice, but I think that, I dedicated the book to my best friend Hannah. We've been friends since we were 11.
Yes.
And the teachers used to call us like thing one and thing two from Dr.
Oh.
Seuss. We were both just a little bit different.
Mm,
But being different felt okay, you know, with her.
mhm,
So I think she's such a fun character for me. She was really fun to write. And I think she and Nori probably, their relationship interests me because I don't think they would have become friends under ordinary circumstances. I think there are some relationships that form under very specific circumstances and they would never happen again. And yet they become extremely powerful and important. And I think that's what we see with Nori and Alice.
mhm, mhm. And sorry, I think the name was Darlene. I think I mispronounced. So I apologize for that. And then the next question is from Megan. And her question is, if you could see your book turned into a movie, who is your dream cast?
Oh my
I,
God.
I would love to, this is going to be incredible. Do you have
Uh,
anything in mind?
Anything with, can I just have Timothy Chalamet as Noah, please? Just just so I could meet Timothy Chalamet. I have a little bit of a crush.
No,
Um,
literally, this is the time when you're like, I want to have all favorite actors, actresses, just to meet them.
and then I think probably Holiday Granger or Saoirse Ronan would make a really good Alice.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
then Nori would be tough to cast. That would probably be really hard. That would be the hardest part. But I'm sure we could come up with someone.
Yeah, no, yeah, but Nori's just because she's in like she her I think her age might be sort of a challenge here, because we meet her when she is still like 8 or 9, and then then she's 12, then 14, 15. So like I think just, is it like one person who plays Nori, or do we have 2 to 3 different people
Yeah,
to
I think you'd need
play
different
the role?
actors to play her.
I don't know. It's more the technical stuff. I'm not sure. So the next question is from Rebecca. And Rebecca would like to know, what are your favorite books? And do you have any favorite writers that influenced this story?
My favorite book, and I will say this until I die, is A Thousand Splendid Suns.
Yes,
It's
yes,
by the same author who wrote The Kite Runner, and I highly, highly recommend that everyone read it. It's beautiful. It's
yeah.
such a great book. And I think that was the book that really cemented for me that I really wanted to be an author.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because for someone who I've never met to write a story set in a country I've never been to and still make me feel so much that I've never forgotten those characters or that story, I was like, wow, I really want to do that. If I can do that for like one person, my life will be complete. And then I also used to read a
Hmm.
lot of C.S. Lewis as a child. The Chronicles of Narnia. My cat is actually named Aslan after the lion in those books.
That's amazing. And I fully agree with you. Khalid Hosseini's books are just, they're like must
Good.
read books. So,
Oh, they're like poetry. They're just gorgeous.
And then, so the next question is from Claudia, and Claudia has asked a question from me. And the question is, how did you come to choose this book? Well, so I have a team, Taylor, and when we joined the, when I became part of the Literati book club, I was my goal was to have the books of first time authors, debut authors, and especially women and then women of color. And unfortunately, we need more and more, women authors, women of color authors, young authors. And so that was, that was my vision. And then there was this book that was the bestseller in that month. And as soon as we read the book, we were like, this is just incredible. And yeah, and it had to be part of our book club. And so and I really enjoyed it, just seeing Nori, how she initially, like, she's not living in a just world, and how she's overcoming, all these difficulties. And just there were some really emotional and difficult bits in the book where you are like, this is just so unfair, from like bleaching her skin to so many other things. It's very painful. But then again, remembering that, she's only, a little teenager who has to see all of this at such a young age, and that this might be a true story of somebody, even in this day and age. So it was an emotional book and a really powerful and inspiring story. And so I had to choose this book, and I'm so glad, that Asha has written this incredible book. It wouldn't have been, possible if she hadn't, uh, you know if she hadn't taken this opportunity to write this incredible book. And then the next question is from Betsy, and she's curious if, Asha, if you can speak Japanese yourself.
So I've been learning Japanese since I was quite young, so I do speak fairly well. But I'm always learning, and I'm a little out of practice at the moment because I've been locked out of Japan for about a year.
Mhm.
Um, so definitely gonna have to brush up before I go back.
Mhm. And do you speak any other languages as well other than
Well,
English?
my stepmom is she's from Italy. She's from
Mm.
Milan. She moved here about 20 years ago, and I do speak a bit of Italian, mostly the swear words. So, but I would actually love to learn better Italian. So that's on the list of things to do in quarantine.
Nice, that's great. And it's probably the best time to learn some new things. I'm currently learning Swahili, and I've started the
Ooh.
beginners course. Yeah, it's just incredible to just learn another language, and just the curiosity around like how languages are structured in different, in these different languages. Where do they put the verb in the noun, and how, it's just incredible. I just love it. I'm always curious about all the languages, and I hope I can learn Japanese as well one day. So the next question is from Robin. And Robin says that Kiyomi is such a complex character, and that, you know, that you have done, that you had a bit of sympathy for her. So Robin would want to know, like, did you struggle with writing a character that has to essentially sell, other women and girls? Like, was there some sort of, difficulty in getting that character across?
I think I try to portray her as human and flawed, and she has some redeeming qualities. Obviously, I don't think she's particularly proud of what she does, but also she was sold herself as a young girl into this trade by her parents. So I think she has risen in the world in her mind. But because she has been in that situation, I think she has a compassion and an empathy that someone else or a man may not have.
Mhm.
I think ultimately Kiyomi she represents a lot of women who um, perpetuate cycles of harm and abuse. I mean, if you look at female circumcision and foot binding and all of these historically
Yes.
harmful practices, they were passed down by women
Yeah.
to their daughters. So
Mhm.
I think ultimately it's a pretty realistic portrayal of how the cycle goes a lot of the time.
Mhm. And again, this is going to be sort of another topic, and that we can go on and we'll never maybe find the answer. But uh, is again, how do you see like the role of patriarchy and misogyny in how women are oftentimes pushed into these practices? Sometimes it's for the sake of honor, sometimes it's just for the sake of maintaining and keeping their relationships, or pleasing the men in society, whether it's their husbands or somebody else, or just keeping the name of the honor of the family. um, you know have you like sort of looked into that as well?
It's all around us,
Mhm.
and I'm a huge history nerd. I love history. So I'm always reading history books or watching documentaries, and I find it so interesting.
Mhm.
But I also find it so infuriating how, for most of human history, and still in a lot of places, as I'm sure you know, more than most people, women are just viewed as objects to be positioned where most convenient for a man. We're not viewed as individuals with just as much power and potential and worth. And I think the women in the novel, even the characters that I don't like, I recognize that they're all trying to do the best they can within the very limited confines that they're given.
Mhm. I fully agree on that. So we have, a few more questions about sort of, your own, writing experience. And Amy, she wants to know, has your writing process stayed the same since the pandemic, or has that allowed you to look into different storylines?
Well, I certainly have less excuses for why my novel's not finished. Uh, I've had more time to read, which is always great because reading inspires me. If I read a great book, it makes me want to do nothing more than go out and write a great book,
Yeah.
hopefully.
What do you often read? Like, are you interested in novels, fiction, nonfiction, biographies? And what are the books that you don't like, that you don't want to read?
I'm pretty much a literary omnivore.
Mhm.
The only things I don't really read, I don't really read romance novels. I don't really read thrillers because they give me anxiety. But I read mostly historical fiction, literary fiction. I try to read books that take place in settings I'm not super familiar with. I'm always trying to learn, and I hope to get to read more books by women and women of color in particular in
Mhm.
2021.
Is there any book that you recently read that you enjoyed? Um,
So I think The Girl with the Louding Voice
mhm, mhm.
is such a great book, and we have the same publisher,
Yeah.
and I was able to get an advanced copy of that book, and it's just so great, and I think it sends a really powerful message about the importance of women having access to education.
Mhm. And speaking of, your publishers and the publishing, Andrea has a question. What was that process like for you? Were there any like obstacles, in your journey?
Yes, it was hard. I spent 2 years trying to get an agent, and along the way, I got some not so helpful advice, such as, well, why don't you set this somewhere more comfortable for an American audience? Why don't you modify some of the behaviors to make it more comfortable for an American audience? This word comfortable kept coming up. And someone actually told me, Nori is a nice girl, but I can't imagine a mainstream audience ever being interested in a story like this.
Mhm.
But you're talented, so maybe you should write something more marketable.
Mm.
Um, But 6 months later, I sold the book. So I'm glad that I didn't give up.
So how do you cope with responses like that? Does it sort of, make you upset, or it's there's always sort of that moment, and then then you're fine the next day because you remind yourself that you deserve to write what you want to write. uh, how did you cope with all of this?
Well, I think ultimately you have to just really not internalize rejection. And
Mhm.
rejection never goes away. You could become the most successful writer, to ever live, and there will still be someone who hates your book. And because of social media, there will still be someone who goes out of their way to make sure uh, that they hated your book. That's just unfortunately part of our culture now. So you just got to get comfortable with it, and you have to not take it personally. At the end of the day, the only way to please everyone is to have nothing to say.
Mhm.
And we all have something to say. So that's how it is.
Fully agree with you on that. I'm just also curious. We all have sort of our first childhood book that, for me, it was The Alchemist. What was your, first book that you read as a child? And this is a question from Paula.
Oliver Twist.
Oliver Twist.
I
Mhm.
loved Oliver Twist. I think I reference it in the novel. I think Nori reads Oliver Twist.
Mhm.
I just loved it. I just loved, you know, I like underdog stories. I think that's where it comes from, and I've never stopped liking stories about characters who have to overcome being overlooked and undervalued.
And Abby is, curious if you are working on some new project. Are you writing another book? And how's that, that side of the work going for you?
Yes. So I can officially announce that there will be another novel. It's called Hemingway's Daughter,
Mhm.
and it is about a young girl named Delphine, who is the daughter of a French poet, socialite, and in her later life, she's severely alcoholic and she also struggles with depression. And she has always told Delphine that her biological father is Ernest Hemingway, and
Mhm.
that the two of them met in 1920s Paris during the kind of artistic renaissance. And so when Delphine is old enough, right after the Nazis have been out of Paris, she embarked on this perhaps ill thought out quest to not only find her father, but also to become a very famous writer so that she can prove to him that she is, in fact, his daughter and that she is worthy of him.
Mhm.
So that is currently what I am working on.
This just, sounds great. We are excited. And I can't wait, for you to publish this book. And, hopefully we can all read it and see you again.
Yeah,
And
I would love that. I would love that.
it sounds great. And I'm just curious, like with, writing novels like these, and they're set in a specific time period. Is your research and, like, is your knowledge based on the research that you do, or do you also like want to visit that place in person? Like, what sort of like familiarity do you want to have? And if it's a historical, sort of piece, or if it's to do with a previous time period, um, like how do you do that research?
I always try to visit the places that are featured in my novels.
Mhm.
Um, so this novel takes place in Paris, Harlem, New York, and Havana, Cuba. So I've been to Paris, I've been to Harlem, I have not yet been to Cuba. So that is foremost on my list when we can travel again. I would love to go see Hemingway's house there and hopefully meet some of his cats.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that is always a part of it, but I also find that it's not strictly speaking necessary. Not everyone has the money to be able to travel to do research. So books are your best friend, documentaries are your best friend. I'm also very fortunate that My stepmom, she worked for the World Bank for over 20 years. Um, she knows someone from every country in the world. I always used to say that my birthday parties were like a meeting of the United Nations. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there was someone from everyone there, and I've been really lucky that I have had all of these influences and that I always have somebody who I can ask questions. So that's great.
That's great. No, we are, so excited for your next book. And we have another question as well. And Darlene has asked us. And the question is, do you imagine Noori meeting her mother?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, they meet again. Nori's mother is still alive,
Mm-hmm.
and there is definitely a confrontation to be had there. So,
And I really loved Noori's mother, character. And like, sort of Noori understands, where her mother was coming from, why, she later finds out through her diaries. And, she sort of understands, how her mother was sort of, sort of a bit different. And she um, was not happy with the life that she was living. So do you think that, uh, for me, like I was really inspired from her mother's character and the role she was playing. But Nori at the same time, like, she has frustrations, but also she's trying to understand. So how was it for you to like build that relationship between mother and daughter? And how do you see that sort of in future as well for them?
well, I think Nori's mother is a complicated woman.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think the first thing that we see of her would lead us to think of her in a very negative light.
Yeah. Hmm.
But then, obviously, even though we don't see her again physically, we do get to explore her through her diaries that Nori reads. And I think hopefully we get to see that, she was a woman who didn't have a great number of choices. Um, so it goes back to this idea that women had basically three roles. You could be a
Hmm.
wife and a mother, or you could be a spinster, or you could be, a sexual object. You really had three choices. And for Psycho, I think she wants more choices. I think she wants more, and she doesn't quite know how to go about getting it. And I think her children end up suffering because of it. But I think hopefully Nori eventually she grows up. I think she understands her mother. I don't know if she forgives her, but I think she reaches a point where she realizes it's not as simple as her mother just being a monster.
Hmm. Hmm. And I was just well, there was so many points when I was reading this book, and I was like, writing, underlining everything, and just curious about so many other things as well. um but I'm also curious about the role of the grandmother. And how do you see that? Or is it at a point where like sort of Nuri is now going to take the charge? And I'm just also curious that the fact that now her grandmother is at a very old age, and Nori has much more power, but she
Yeah.
still is trying not to be too radical and rebellious. So she's taking everything slowly. And I was just thinking if there's any specific reason for why she's more evolutionary in the changes, or like the hope that she has for changing the way things are. Like, is there any specific reason behind it? Why is she not a bit more sort of radical about the changes that she would want to see one day?
Well, I think Nori is ultimately a very kind-hearted character.
Hmm.
So I think she says that she's not going to torment a dying woman. She's just
Hmm.
not going to do that. That doesn't mean she's not fully committed
Yeah.
to her vision for this family. She is not doing this to please her grandmother.
Yeah.
She's just, if her grandmother wants to think that, that's fine with her. because, ultimately she's on the way out
Mhm,
and Nori's on the way in.
mhm,
And I think she learned from her grandmother.
mhm,
I
mhm,
think she learned what not to be.
mhm,
And
mhm.
sometimes that can be just as important.
And another question, just a quick one, is, if Akira, had still been there, like what do you think was his vision for the future of this family? What was he hoping for?
I certainly think he would have modernized it, and I
Mm,
certainly think he would have made it less about um, these kind of antiquated ideas. I think he probably would have been a level-headed businessman who
yeah.
took a lot of time off to go play the violin in Paris.
Hmm. Hmm. And do you like, just the idea of like monarchy itself? Um, do you ever, see any of these characters ever thinking of, completely demolishing that system, and just deciding that this shouldn't be there? Or do you think there is sort of that, that attachment to it, that this is part of their, of who they are, and this is sort of the world that they're living in? It's back at that time, where there was this influence. So do you think that, it was Akira, or or Nori, in their heart were they just hoping for a world where, they're not living in this family or not living in this world?
I think that probably the only character who really truly doesn't care is Nori.
Hmm.
Even
Hmm.
Akira, he is a lot more forward thinking, but he certainly benefits from his proximity to in his a historically powerful aristocratic family. And I don't really know if he wants to give all of that up. It's very
Hmm.
hard to walk away from privilege, especially when in your mind it's not hurting anyone else.
Yeah.
So, and I think monarchy in the way that exists today is fine
Hmm.
because it's really just a figurehead, and I think it can be a wonderful way to preserve culture, to preserve tradition, to stand as a reminder.
Hmm.
But I think certainly the days of absolute monarchy are over, and good riddance.
Hmm. Well, thank you so much, Asha. If there is, anything else you would want to add, we had so many questions. Please do. But it was, so nice talking to you, and we're so grateful that you gave your time. And then thank you so much for writing this amazing book. We all loved it and enjoyed it, and we are so excited for
Thank
your
you.
next novel as well.
Thank you so much for having me, Malala.
Yeah, thank you so much, Asha.
I will
And I
look
wish.
forward to our tea.
Yes, no, we have to meet, and we have to have a nice cup of tea.
Yes.
And we're excited for all the, everything else that you do next.
Thank you.
And thank you so much to, our book club members for joining, and thank you so much for submitting all the thoughtful questions. And I hope that you will enjoy the book for February, which is the wedding date. And I, look forward to hearing your thoughts on that. Well, take rest, enjoy your day. And it was so nice talking to you, Asha, and it was so nice to read out the questions from all our incredible readers.